If a white guy walks into a school with a rifle and opens fire, that one story alone will trigger panicked calls for gun control, spark nationwide marches, launch an all-out war against the NRA, and fuel the national media machine for months. But apparently, if an Iranian woman with a handgun walks into a business and shoots it up, that's worth about a day. Probably because this isn't really about gun violence, it's about an agenda. Hey guys, welcome back to Reality Check on MRC TV. I'm Brittany Hughes. On Tuesday, news broke that an active shooter was loose inside YouTube's headquarters in San Bruno, California. And it took all of about 5 minutes to figure out who the shooter was. Turns out that it wasn't a white guy with a rifle, which is the left's favorite boogeyman when it comes to mass shootings. Nope. This time it was an Iranian female PETA activist in a headscarf with a 9mm handgun who had decided she was pissed at her job. And that just does not fit with the gun control narrative. Everyone noticed how that whole story just completely fell out of the news cycle like a lead balloon? Man, that was quick. It was major news for about a minute, but when it turned out that the shooter was a Middle Eastern woman with a handgun, the media dropped that story like a bad habit. And they were not the only ones. Before the police had even cleared the scene on Tuesday, actor Michael Ian Black, that guy who plays in that show that you don't care about, him, he was promising to politicize the shooting and declared once again that the NRA was a terrorist organization. Then it came out that the gunman was a Middle Eastern tree hugger and everything went crickets on his Twitter feed. When news of an active shooter first broke, Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein both immediately tweeted that they were monitoring the situation very closely and renewed their calls for gun reform. When it turned out the shooter was a foreign chick armed with a handgun, they suddenly found much better things to do with their time. Fancy that. Now, it's interesting which shootings the leftist media decides to focus on and which it doesn't. If gun violence is really the issue, then they would be concerned with all of it, right? You would think. But that never seems to be the case. If a shooter lights up a gay nightclub, it's all over the headlines for weeks. But if a guy guns down a bunch of country music fans in Las Vegas, we still don't know why he did it, what his girlfriend did or didn't know, or why the police did not respond faster. Because that story just got buried, and no one seems to care that we still have no idea how or why it happened. A man shoots up a church and gets put down by an NRA instructor with an AR-15, and that story lasts about a day and a half. The Parkland shooting has been in the news for 2 months. And I guarantee you that had the YouTube shooter been a white male wearing a MAGA hat and armed with a rifle, we would be talking about it for the next 5 years. But it was a foreign woman in a headscarf with a pistol, so the media has already aborted that mission post-hasty. Yeah. Because see, this isn't really about gun violence, and it's not about finding solutions. It's not about victims or mental illness or figuring out what policies might actually help stop these crazy people. It was and has always been about pushing a narrative and focusing solely on those select stories that fit that narrative. And this one simply didn't. And that's your Reality Check, America. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay sane out there.